Hello, everyone. Uh, Another interesting day on the markets today. Happy 4th of July for probably tomorrow, I guess, for most in the US. But it is actually 4th of July here. So this is not financial advice. This is just the way I'm looking at the market. And hopefully it helps you guys get some clarity as well. Very interesting day. Pretty well did what we expected. Asia seems to be the one moving the market at the moment still. Asia and Europe seem to be the one making the moves. I'll just go back here. What I've been looking at, because we're pushing these lows again, I just went and had a look at the what do they call them? The volume footprints, yeah. And just minimize these for a sec. So we've broken this level here. That's pretty clear. So we're going to come back down into here. And if Bitcoin's going to reverse from this point, I would actually think it needs to turn at about that 58,730 mark or thereabouts, 58,700, say. Do I think that's what happens? Probably not. If we get down to there, I think it's going to at least get to that 200 EMA. In which case it could just power straight through that. Now, it could also just come into this point here. So 59,100-ish, thereabouts. Call it 59K. If we close below 59K, I think we're going a lot lower. I think tomorrow's probably going to be a relatively quiet day on the markets, unless today, the next daily candle, put it that way. Unless Asia throws the toys out of the basket again, out of the cot, sorry. If they do, then yeah, we'll go down a fair bit more, I think. But it could just be sort of a sideways day somewhere in this range. But it's not looking good. Like, this sort of pattern here is kind of a rollover pattern that I have seen before, and it feels like previous times where Bitcoin has rolled over and then shot to the downside. Now, what I'm sort of looking for is, okay, where's the imbalances here? And when you see big differences between the value areas in consecutive candles, that's typically what you're looking for. But with this candle here, it's kind of the wick here, it's on a low volume. So I would consider this as kind of canceling out this wick. And that, I guess, is a little concerning, because it means this probably isn't going to provide a hell of a lot of support. There is a fair volume sort of here, but don't think it'll hold for very long. Now, I could be wrong. We just have to see price action once it gets to that point. Just a quick update too. If you the heat map is giving us a pretty good idea of what's going on at the moment. I don't expect this little bounce on this candle to last very long. This is the target area for it. There's, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of liquidity in this point. Yeah, that's a fairly obvious target, but a lot of people going long in this region. I don't know why. I'm glad they did, because we've got a short open at the moment, but this is it's forming a bear flag, but it's also very typical. I'll go through the candles in a sec. You can kind of tell what's happening. Yeah, so liquidity, if we go back out to the 3 month, there's still not a hell of a lot down here, eh? So, yes, that's probably going to be a target. Whether it keeps going through there, we'll just have to wait and see. But I suspect that will have to have a down on the overall stock market for that to be broken, I would think. So probably more down, bit of a pause at around that 56K mark, and then we'll have to see how it goes from there. Whoops. So that's your level there that we were just looking at. If we break that, you can see here there was this value area in that candle, the daily candle there. I don't know that that's going to provide much resistance because it has already been, I guess, claimed by this next candle. So this next candle did reach into the bottom of that value area low. So that's another reason why I don't think it'll provide much support. This one here, probably not going to provide much either. I think it really does come back down into this area here. Probably stop somewhere around here. I'd be looking for that as a potential long-term bounce point. But what I actually suspect, and but you can find these going back all the way back down to 20K or lower if you want. It's going to depend on how the market is looking overall and whether liquidity comes back in to the overall system and we get a risk on market again. But it's not feeling like a risk on market is going to be something that's coming soon, just based on everything I'm, witnessing and looking at. All right, let's go back to a nicer look at all this. Oops. So obviously that's a fairly big engulfing candle there. We've broken that value area high. Logically, the next step is back into this region. It's just this 200 EMA. We'll see what that does. We could even get a wick below down into this 57K, 56 maybe. And then if we close it back above that 200 EMA, then I'd be interested to see if we were actually going to be finding some interest on this indicator. So this indicator isn't anything special. Like, it doesn't draw data from the blockchain or anything like that. It's based on a read of the RSI levels, and it's quite clever and simple in what it does. But if we start to see these candles building up, if we get a green on both of these, then that's when I'm going to be looking at, okay, we're starting to form a base here. And you could potentially look at it on the 4 hour as well. Yeah, so not so much yet. And that's why, like, the simplicity of the indicator is why it will potentially give you some false signals sometimes. So with that being said, I'll have a quick look before we get into the shorter time frames. Just make sure that's turned off. All right. So NASDAQ broken new all-time highs. That's quite bullish. And this is the thing, Bitcoin, whilst Bitcoin seems to be in a risk-off market. The rest of the market seems to be risk-on still. So looks like SPY's done it as well. What's that high there? 5588. Yeah. So S&P 500's breaking to new all-time highs. Yeah, a bit clearer. Nvidia's pumped. Interesting. Looks like that 20 EMA is providing a bit of support for it there. What's it? S&P 500 didn't even hit that. It kind of looks like we're in that blow off top kind of region for the markets. IWM's not particularly interested in the move. Equal weighted isn't particularly interested in the move. 50% of, sorry, less than 50% of stocks are above their 50-day moving average. So, and that's pretty flat still. Yeah, it just seems like there's just money moving around. And it's like, okay, we come out of the Mag 7 for a little bit, made some money in the other ones, sold out of them, come back into the Mag 7 and pump it again. It's nuts. Anyway, oils looks like it's trying to reach for a breakout of this 800 EMA. This will be a critical level for it as well. So the 800 EMA is just one confluence in here. You've actually got a fairly good resistance level there at about 83.8. If we do see a breakout in oil, that could form a bit of a local top. Bonds kind of agreeing with the rally at the moment. Skew will probably be going up. And again, Skew kind of predicted this pump. Skew's an interesting one to have on your charts. It's very worthwhile. Tends to be just in front of the market most of the time. Quick look at the Dixie. So Dixie has come back now. It's bounced pretty much off the middle of our Gaussian channel. It's probably got another down day, I'd say. I'm just going to have a quick look. I'm actually going to insert a symbol in here. JPY, USD. So it doesn't look like the Japanese Federal Reserve has, or Federal Reserve, whatever, their bank, doesn't look like they've intervened yet. So everyone's sort of waiting for Japan to intervene in their currency. They've been warned by the US not to. They've been flagged as a currency manipulator, which God knows what that means and whether they care. But you know, that breakout there, normally they would try and bring it back down like they did here, right? So that there was caused by the bank intervening and selling a heap of US bonds to basically prop up their currency. Now, I'm assuming they've still got a lot of bonds left. What that means for the US dollar is that it will most likely weaken the US dollar because Japan will be selling US bonds and US dollars into the market. So that, like a weaker dollar, should mean a stronger stock market and a stronger Bitcoin. Typically, that's the way they're correlated. So that is something to definitely look out for. It already looks like the dollar is rolling over here. So this run could go for a little bit longer. VIX is obviously still pretty flat. Not a lot of volatility on the VIX there either, so you don't often get candles that are that small on the VIX. Interesting. XLY, XLP again is still supporting this rally. We pointed that out yesterday. If this starts to roll over and stocks are still going up, I'd be concerned. That's sort of a topping signal. XLI, still hasn't broken below this range. Man, if this breaks below the range, you might get a bounce off the 200, but this is your next support here. So industrials could struggle, and that would make sense because if the economy's struggling, eventually it's going to hit the industrial sector. All right. So your 10-year has actually bounced. Surprise, surprise. That's because the 10-year's dropped significantly. 2-year dropped as well, but that's interesting. All right. Oil. I've already done that. So the money supply is increasing a little bit. Oh, crazy graph. What was I looking for? Hang on. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so still a downtrend on global liquidity, but it has picked up a little bit. So it's kind of supporting this rally as well. Okay, back into Bitcoin. So, well, let's have a quick look at Sol as well. Sol seems to have found resistance around the middle of that band. That's a pretty bearish sign too. A lot of other coins are looking at breaks below some pretty significant levels. Like, June 22 low is being eyed off by Matic. BNB is still high. It's pretty much following Bitcoin. Let's have a look at some other decent ones. So DOT. Yeah. Not looking super healthy. But, I mean, whether these come back down and break these lows or not, there's a fair bit of structure in there. But you might find some of the alts actually find some support just from the community not wanting to sell, just hodling them. But yeah, there's some pretty serious levels on some of these coins, and it's not looking great. Like it looks like it's struggling to make any new highs in this area for a lot of the coins. Like even Sol. Let's just do a quick analysis on Sol. So that there seems to be providing a bit of support. Daily closes below that. You're probably going back at least into the 105 mark. Potentially somewhere down around even here, around the 73. But this here will be a fairly decent order block, I would say. Might break into this region, but you're probably going to find support by the bottom of it, around that 81. All right. So back into shorter term timeframes on Bitcoin. Interesting little bounce here. I did kind of expect it to flush a bit further through. but this would be an interesting place for it to find some support. Reason being, just want to have a quick look. Yeah, so the value area low on this candle here was actually around the 59,600. If we break below that, there is a little imbalance here that it might try and stop at 59,500-ish. But realistically, if we break below that, you're expecting to come into this area here. Where there's a few gaps in those value areas. Your next point of support is probably going to be in that 58,690 region. But there's an imbalance down here as well. So and sort of the fact that we haven't, like the next candle along didn't come back into this value area at all, suggests that this will be a target. And you've got that liquidity chart that we looked at 58,600 level is a pretty critical sort of level there. Just bring that back up actually. See, we've got some confluence there. $24-hour. So the bottom of this, 59,335 down to 58,700. So yeah, geez. If we, like, there's a lot of liquidity at that 59,490. But generally, if we're going to take that bit, we'll actually clear that whole level there. Doesn't always happen. Like, we didn't necessarily clear it all there, but that was a cheeky little candle. It took the majority of it and then went the other way. And that's all this area is doing, really. It's just getting people to think, oh yeah, I'm going long, it's going to bounce here, whatever reason. It just builds those longs up and then rips them to the downside. So what do I think happens today? Sorry, just come back into there. Go back to the normal candles. Honestly, we'd probably go sideways for a couple of hours to, it's been about 11 o'clock each day, or somewhere between 11 and 1 p.m. Sydney time, that Asia's really had a hissy fit and moved the market. Yeah, about 11. Spot on 11 and then just ripped and kept ripping. And I think this, yeah, so Asia brought it down to here, sideways, basically into the European time zones, and then Europe decided to do the same thing. And that's typically how it's been working lately, like just sideways chop. When you're seeing vector candles sort of not being followed through, vector candles at the high and then it reverses, it's just liquidity grabs and distribution before big moves. Now, it's not necessarily like these things don't necessarily mean it's going long or short. It just means they're building something, and then TA is what's going to really tell you where they're going. But yeah, this little bounce here, I'm not expecting to be a massive reversal point. There's no significant volume coming in there. It's only just reclaimed that, just hit the 13 EMA there. So yeah, looking like another down day, to be honest. Someone could come in and just rip it to the upside, but I think the Asian session is going to be another critical one today. That's about the summary, really. It's very interesting that this is happening while the rest of while the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq are pumping. And that's probably concerning to me. It just shows you how little liquidity and how little interest there is in the crypto market at the moment. One thing I was going to show you quickly was. Oh, Rhea, how you going? The VIX is a volatility index. I think it uses options for the S&P 500 to basically show volatility, but you can actually trade it. So big institutions use the VIX to sort of protect longs sometimes. So they'll actually buy the VIX because the VIX will generally go up when the market's going down. But it's the people that trade that must be freaking nuts. Like the volatility on the VIX itself is crazy, and you get big fees if you hold it too long and stuff like that. So it's an interesting instrument, but it can show you, like if the VIX is pumping, generally the market's going down, but there's key levels on the VIX that can signify or can give you an idea of good times to actually buy again, like when you might be bottoming. So, what I was going to show you, yeah. So what this kind of looks like, and Bitcoin is renowned for sort of doing this. If you've got a general down move like this, it tends to be Bitcoin is just building positions, and you'll find pretty good support, especially when you're doing it within a range like that. But what tends to happen on the daily in particular that I've seen previously is when you've got a lot of vectors, you're going sort of sideways and gradually going down, you got a decent amount of volume, and then you sort of, this is sort of that rollover pattern where sometimes you can get an update and stuff in between, but generally it'll roll over once it gets below some key levels. And once you start that waterfall effect, you tend to get a big flush, especially when you've got, vector candles to the left. There will be a point at which it does a big flush. Just out of interest, this would be a very interesting point for Bitcoin to come back into that region there at some stage in the future. I don't think it does it at the moment, but that's why it's worthwhile just looking at shorter term timeframes. Sometimes you can get like this little pump here. If you weren't knowing that this was the daily, this is actually what Bitcoin did to us with the longs the other day that the bot took. It actually pumped a little, got people interested, and then flushed. Now that was the FTX crash, but it's reasonably often that you will see something like that. Same thing here. You just get that gradual up, building, and then the flush. And it just feels like that's what we're in at the moment. It feels like, we've had some down. I don't think it feels like this one. It feels more like this one, where you've got some apprehension in the market. The market sort of thinks, okay, we're going. This is potentially a bottom. People are crying out, this is the bottom, this is the bottom. And then it just slowly flushes, and people are looking at it here going, oh, no, this could be the bottom. This could still be the bottom. This could still be the bottom. And then, fuck, it's not the bottom. So I guess just be careful going long here. Wait for signs of a decent turnaround. And we haven't seen them yet, to be honest. And with these sort of moves, I'm looking on the daily for that sign of turnaround in terms of DCAing in. Is Bitcoin at a discount at the moment? Yes, it is. So could you put some money into it and DCA into some altcoins and stuff like that? Yes, you could. I did it on the way down because at this point here, you just don't know whether Bitcoin's going up or not. I have actually converted a little bit more into BTC here, but I didn't do as much as I probably would have if the charts looked different. So I'm actually going to be waiting to put more in until I see some proper signs that we're correcting. All right, but yeah, not looking great. Sideways for a couple of hours and then potentially more down. We could get a little bit of a pump up. Generally, you want to hit into decent moving averages. The one thing interesting we haven't done in a little while is actually hit the 200 EMA. Oops. So typically on decent moves, it does like to come back into the 200 EMA at various stages. So this could be more of a longer consolidation period. Because even sort of on the hourly, we're fairly extended outside. It came back into the 13 EMA on the hourly, but typically you'll see retracements back into at least the 50 on the hourly or 200 on the 5 minute, for instance. Those sort of areas. It's just doesn't quite look like that at the moment. Bitcoin does like to fake people out too, though, so you know, it wouldn't be super surprising to go a bit more sideways and have a little bounce throughout the day. Even like Asia could come back in and say, right, yeah, let's actually fake some people out, make them think that this is the bottom. So we could actually come back up into this level. That trade will be stopped out probably in about here somewhere. Actually, no, probably in about there somewhere. Before that happens, but you know, that 800 EMA could be a point in which it tries to go to. It could try and tidy up some of that liquidity up around here, 61.55 before the flush, but like it's not looking like that at the moment. It's looking more like a rollover, which is like a flush from the low. It doesn't have the long interest to actually push it higher to get to these levels to flush some of that short liquidity before it comes down. But that's definitely a possibility because there is that liquidity there at 61.5. Okay. So just be aware of that. Set your position sizing and stop losses accordingly. Because, yeah, we're still in relatively low liquidity. We did obviously have a reasonable volume day today, but still not huge. So market will move pretty quickly between key levels on days like this. All right. That's it for today. Fairly important one, but I'll be keeping an eye on it out the corner of my eye while I do some work today. I'll catch you later.